Elaka Mubankai, and Lopere, Pop, Jaisa, there was again a big Kayabamu, open my Ya Bilaka, Ya Babama, Ya Betana, Nelomo, Anumana Kimpelanda, Musuno Pune, Suya Musuno Labai, Ya Betana, Epatipatia, and Rilo, I can Jaguay, Ya Betanialo, I love Papa, Papa, Ya Canela Tusa, I love your melody, Bibame, I love Yadulaka, Yalukelo, Yasikimema, Ankanela Tusadoye, Oya Kayeli, Alojina Pila, no la baila, no Open my German and Ya Bilaka, Ya Babama, Ya Betana, Nelomo, Anumana Kimpelanda, Musuno Pune, Suya Musuno Labai, Ya Betana, Epatipatia, and Rilo, I can Jaguay, Ya Betanialo, I love Papa, Ya Canela Tusa, I love your melody, Bibame, I love Yadulaka, Yalukelo, Yasikimema, Ankanela Tusadoye, Oya Kayeli, Alojina Pila, Sunya Musuno Labai, Sunya Musuno Ponte, Ya Babama, Ya Betana, the workers are Betana Sayna, and I miss your Yaku, Yakamadi, Abetana and the neighbor, I said, my wife to Kai, Adulakai, Tanama Benu, Ola Pasiku, Biama, I think I don't care. And when I know, then I'm on all the Pandia, Lomo, Yanaba, Bila, Yanamo, the bonus, Abetena, yes, I said, Yakashama, what's my one of the day? Someone that won a I don't know which you are.
Alright, I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to each and every one of you. Welcome to the Max Kpakio talk show. It's a midweek edition. Today the 31st, the last day for October 2018. The time from where I sit and broadcast is just 2 o'clock here in the United Kingdom. It's great to be in your midst this afternoon once again. Of course, we'll be discussing Mama Liberia once again. Our studio guest this afternoon on the Max Kpakio talk show is Dr. Nat Barnes. So in a moment from now, hopefully we'll have our studio guest in the studio. We'll be discussing Mama Liberia. So once again, let me say welcome. It's an honor to be with you. So right now we're in Grand Cape County. Our theme for the Max Kpakio talk show. Of course, we're in a period of absolute power exhibition. All right, coming up shortly is the Max Kpakio talk show. Today, Dr. Nat Barnes will be in our studio. So once again, let me say good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending the time from where you are listening to this broadcast and also watching it. Presently, We are broadcasting into at least 5 countries across the continent of Africa. So all of our listeners there, Post Media Radio International, I want to say welcome to you. Let's see whether we can establish contact now with our studio guests. All right, our dashboard is acting some kind of way. We can see our guests in the way we're supposed to see him to request him come on. Dad, if you can, if you can't, please place the call because I can see you active on my dashboard. Okay, I was still trying to get in touch to get a link with. Okay, I think I've seen the call coming out, so let me see. Yeah. All right, let's try again and see. Okay, I think there's something going on now positively. Let's hope we're gonna have him on soon. Okay.
Hi, Max. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's I think it's well set. The way you said it is really good. Yeah, we can see you. We all can see you good. So let's hear from you whether the audio is okay from our end.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Great. All right, we can hear you as well. We can hear you loud and clear and very, very well said. Thank you once again, Dad. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And how are you this afternoon?
I'm very well, thank you. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Max.
All right, let's start it this way because I know you personally, well, in a way, but many of our listeners, especially those that are listening via the radio as well across the continent, might not know you, but they can get to know you today as well by virtue of your introducing yourself to us and just tell us a little bit. I know the CV should be almost a booklet, but just cut it short for us.
No, my name is Nathaniel Barnes. I was born and raised in Liberia. I I've been a public servant for much of my career. Prior to joining public service, I worked in corporate America and in corporate Liberia before that. I'm married to Dr. Cooper Barnes. We have 6 wonderful children and 2 lovely grandchildren. I presently reside in Liberia. I own and manage a small business consultancy at this point. And greetings from Liberia.
Welcome. That is good to interact with you once again, and of course we hope that our fellow Liberians that are across the world that will be listening or even watching you live today will have an opportunity to also interact with you by virtue of perhaps they wanting to find out what is going on in Liberia from your perspective. How do you analyze things as well? So let's hope we'll have a wonderful interactive discussion this afternoon. So once again, welcome to the Max K Talk Show.
I'm happy to be here.
Now, before we start, I've been reading your piece, the piece you wrote recently, which of course I don't know the chronological synopsis of happenings and developments that you gave us in this particular piece. For me, quite educative. If I was even perhaps a teacher in Liberia now teaching civic education, perhaps I would have passed on this information to our children. However, be that, thank you for that. I will go into this piece because we have some information there that if we don't touch on them, perhaps we will not even build up. Maybe we will not even gain enough from you this afternoon. And so, but before we move forward, let's do a little bit on the current event in your country. We know definitely you were in politics before, or maybe you stay sitting somehow in politics, but more like you are involved in private in your private activities as well. As far as the political development in your country is concerned, from January to now is concerned, how will you put it? Is everything okay?
For the moment, I think so. I think politically things are okay. Economically, things are very, very difficult. And I think that's primarily due to the fact that, well, there's a general global economic slowdown. Everyone understands that. But I think that investors, both local or domestic and global investors, are still keeping a holding pattern, keeping a wait and see approach to see what really develops from a governance perspective. So as a result of that, things have become quite tough economically. Inflation is over 20%. Unemployment is quite high. We just experienced an increase in the price of fuel, and basic commodities are all, there's an increase in the prices. And I think it's basically because generally investors, potential investors, are still waiting, wait and see type approach. I'm hoping and praying that we can overcome that soon. The government recently, just this week, released their formal agenda, development agenda, also known as the Pro-Poor agenda for development. I think people are now looking at that, trying to digest it and see, how they can work around that. The opposition, if there's such a thing, political opposition, have been relatively quiet. The institutional opposition, so to speak, have been relatively quiet and patient, I think. They have, again, trying to give this government a chance and see what happens. But on the other hand, there are still some pretty aggressive and vocal groups out there that are expressing some level of unhappiness. But all in all, I say at this point in time, there's still a certain amount of economic uncertainty. People are having a difficult time economically, but we all just wish for the best. I need to say off the bat that Nathaniel Barnes, personally, I do not consider myself opposition from a political perspective. I'm not anti anybody. I'm pro-Liberia. And being pro-Liberia, of course, means you want to see, in my mind, I want to see the best for Liberia. So regardless of who is president or who is in the political leadership of Liberia, it's in our all best interest.
All right, I think we having a little bit of break there due to.
It's in, are you there, Max? It's in all Liberians' interests to make sure that our government is successful. So we just need to make sure that that happens. It doesn't matter to me who's in the leadership, but we must make sure they must do the right things to ensure our overall success for everyone.
Let me borrow this from you, because you just said as far as the wait and see scenario is concerned, that's what you're seeing from the international perspective. You being in a diplomat, in a diplomatic area of representing your country for years, you've been you've been working for your country as a civil servant for many years as well. When you are in the diplomatic circle, when you're representing your government, we know definitely your responsibility as well is to engage with governments, their business, let's say entrepreneurs or either investors, to encourage them to go back in your country, to take advantage of the climate there and invest. You've been doing that for many years. The wait and see aspect scenario that you see now, why do you think the wait and see is going on for 9 months?
I think it's a wait and see, not only for Liberia. You must understand something. In the world of global investments, it's a competition.
Yeah.
Okay, it's competition. Liberia is in a competitive struggle with a lot of other countries trying to attract investment. So a potential investor will look at Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, Vietnam, Laos, wherever, and rank them. And based on what they think, which particular environment will provide the best return on the investment, that's where they will go. And so in that, looking at Liberia, it's not just looking at Liberia in a vacuum. They're looking at Liberia relative to other potential countries like Liberia or similar to Liberia that have natural resources or that have something that they may want or market that they may want to exploit. So they have to do that analysis. And once you have a new government that comes in place, a new political order, so to speak, investors will, again, they are prudent. Remember, investors are risk averse.
Yeah.
They try to find a way to mitigate or minimize their risk. And until they have a certain amount of confidence in that particular environment, they will not invest in it. So we, on the other hand, our government needs to ensure that we do or take certain actions to ensure that our environment, that our country is attractive to those investors. Then, of course, you ask, well, what needs to be done? And it goes back to the paper I wrote, okay? Unfortunately, I think many times with political leadership, we have our priorities, they have their priorities wrong, so to speak. In other words, they think, I want to build roads, I want to build schools, I want to improve education, and I want to do healthcare, I want to do infrastructure. Those are all wonderful things. They're good things to have because that's what will attract investors. When you have a healthy labor force, you have a skilled labor force, you have a good road system, transport network. Those are all very, very good things. However, in the case of Liberia, we have a fundamental problem with our foundation. Okay, you cannot build a paradigm for a good, solid education system, or a paradigm for a good healthcare system, or a paradigm for a good transportation and road network when the foundation that your country is sitting on is weak. Okay, and we have a weak foundation, and that weak foundation, the pillars of that weak foundation is corruption, impunity, the absence of capacity, ineptness, tribalism, the absence of reconciliation. Until we go and fix those areas, and that to me, what our government should be looking at. Don't get me wrong. All those things I mentioned earlier, they are important, okay, to see the improvement of our people. Yeah. But you cannot build all those things on a system that is corrupt, on a system that is not united, on a system that is not reconciled. And if that particular criticism is not directed only at this government, this is a historical issue that we have had. Okay, so what we need to focus on is how can we look. In my mind, there are two fundamental things that must be done from an economic to encourage economic activity. Number one, we must address corruption. Absolutely. If we don't address corruption, we will not get anywhere economically. Number two, we must control cost. We have a situation here in Liberia where we have runaway costs. Our government is unable, and it's not just this government. Governments in the past have been unable to manage cost. Okay, and there are two sides. It's a balance sheet. There are two sides of the balance sheet. Okay, you got your assets and you got your liabilities. Okay, now we just focus so much on revenue. Revenue. We want more revenue. We must expand the revenue base. But the fact of the matter is, Liberia has a limited revenue base. There's just but so much taxes we can collect, given our situation now. So we need to look at the other side of the balance sheet and try to manage costs. There is no reason in the world why a government minister should be driving an $80,000 vehicle.
All right, that
okay, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, because, there's no reason in the world why we should be paying members of our legislature $15,000 a month.
You have the money.
We have a situation of runaway cost, and until we can control that cost and control corruption, we have a serious economic hurdle.
That I know that most of what you're just talking about, they are incited in this document, in this paper, which is so unique in the way, as far as moving Liberia forward is concerned. If we perhaps borrow what you said here and we listen to it and we go by it, but let's deal with the current event as well. With respect to the government have just released how do you call it? Would that be referred to as a vision for development? Of course, they call it the proper agenda. They just released the proper agenda steps, the blueprint for the way forward in Liberia. Have you read the document and have you digested it?
I have received it. I've begun to study and analyze it. And until I'm done with it, then I prefer to hold any opinions or any sentiments I may have. I haven't studied it closely enough.
Is it timely, or you think it came a bit late? It should have been maybe from during the election time.
Well, it depends. It depends on how comprehensive it is. If it's a very, very comprehensive document that takes into issues, okay, then a thing like that will take a bit of time to do. But up until now, the whole concept of the pro-poor agenda has really been a political slogan, so to speak. So there didn't seem to be any substance behind it. So we need to look at it, what has been launched to the public. We need to look at it, we need to analyze it critically and see that it was worth the time waiting for. Okay, but, so at this point in time, I really can't say.
Well, as far as crafting documents is concerned, from your experience, since you've been serving us, giving back to the country, serving in various positions, as far as crafting documents is concerned, we've been good at that, except for the implementation, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. And it goes back to the whole issue of the foundation. You see, that we Liberians have this gift of gab. We are able to talk and to say nice words and to say all the appropriate rhetoric, okay? But we have a serious issue with disciplining ourselves, okay, into implementation. For example, I'll talk about the issue of controlling runaway costs. We talk about all these austerity things that need to be done, okay, but nobody's prepared to take that courageous step forward and say, okay, we're going to stop spending $80,000 on cars. We're going to cut down foreign travel, okay? We're going to reduce the size of government. Those are all hard, very difficult decisions to make that requires quite a bit of courage. And no one seems to be ready to take that step. You see, so until we are prepared to do that, it's all just words.
All right. His name is Dr. Nat Barnes, former diplomat of the Republic of Liberia, former government officials of the Republic of Liberia, former civil servant as well of the Republic of Liberia, and of course, a former standard bearer as well. But of course, he's telling us that he doesn't regard himself right now as an opposition. Of course, I would love for him to clarify for that on that. That you recently wrote this paper because what we're talking about from the surface now, most of it is in this particular document, which I say, it's so unique in the sense that everything you spoke about here, even from the time I started knowing myself to be a citizen of Liberia, I've followed some of the trends, and it's still going on. But we take we take a deep look at it so that at least those that haven't had the opportunity to actually see what you have written or read it, they can benefit from it. Well, let's just start off by you saying that Liberia is in trouble.
We are.
Are we saying
we've been in trouble for many, many generations.
We've
been in trouble for many generations.
But we have been having saviors as well. Dokim, Charles Taylor Kim.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying my analysis, and I have to be very careful of this because those that read the analysis or have listened to it, they have always just focused on the current administration. And I said in a note, even before I wrote my first sentence, this is analysis covering several generations of leadership and the Liberia experience, so to speak. We've been in trouble from day one. And the reason why we've been in trouble is because we've been living in denial. There are certain aspects of our existence that we refuse to come to grips with. Okay, we choose to act like the Americans say, the 800-pound gorilla is in the room, and we refuse to act. We refuse to acknowledge it. We act as though it's not there. Okay. For example, we are not a reconciled people. This is not something that we're talking about today. It's been from all the way back. Okay. We are not a reconciled people because we haven't taken the time to understand the root cause of why we are not reconciled. We are afraid to do so. Every time we do it on a very cursory level. Okay, and then we say, okay, it's done, but it's not. It's not. And so until we come to grips with those things, okay, we won't be able to move forward in a serious or sustainable way. Okay. Now, I need to say this because a lot of people say, well, Barnes, you are in government. You were Minister of Finance. You were head of the Social Security. You were ambassador. Why didn't you do something about it? Well, that's a very interesting question. And the answer to that is I did. Okay, but to be able to change Liberia as we want it to be, it doesn't take one person, not the president, not one person. It takes everyone. So a person might be working in the function of a minister of finance or an ambassador for that matter. And within the confines or the framework of their terms of reference, they perform and do all the things they can do. But yet it may just have only a minuscule impact on the larger picture. Okay, so that's why I have absolutely no problem speaking in a constructive, critical kind of way. Okay, if you look at my record, and I don't mean to be selfish or personal or arrogant about it, you look at my record and it will prove the opportunities I had to make a difference, I did. Okay, did it make a difference? In some instances, yes.
Let me share this with our listening audience. Then you can actually expand on it. You say here, over the generations, there have been multiple attempts to create structures that would result in sustained political stability, economic expansion, and social cohesion. Interestingly, while some of these attempts produced limited resources or sources, they did not result in the desired impact when measured using human growth and development indexes. Policies associated with Tubman's unification and open door initiatives towards total involvement, mat to mattress, those in the cause of the people, the struggle continues. Taylor, above all else, the people. The slaves left Liberia have not capitulated Liberia anywhere near the unlimited goal of becoming a middle-income country in the foreseeable future. That's a bit gloomy in terms of...
Well, let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Many of those things appeared like political slogans, but in some instances, they were backed by some policy. For example, let's go as far back as Tubman, who introduced the open door policy. Okay? And the basic driver behind the open door policy was to open the country up, open the economy up to external international investment, let these people come in and create an environment that would encourage investment and exploitation of our natural resources. For a short time, that program worked very well. But at some point in time, somebody forgot to close the door a little bit. So the door was open, and it was just open wide. For example, as a result of the open door policy that was never shut a little bit, we still have a situation where it's been purely extractive. Our resources have been extracted in its raw state and taken somewhere else to put value. So at some point in time, someone said, well, this policy, someone should have said, this policy has worked so far, but we need to begin to put some framework around it or additional conditions to it that will say, okay, when you are exporting rubber or in its natural form, latex, you need to begin to find ways to add value. Let's establish a condoms manufacturing facility or rubber gloves facility or a tire facility. Okay, so we begin to add value to our natural resources. So what I'm trying to say is open door policy was good in terms of opening the country up and inviting investment. But at some point in time, no one thought, how can we improve on this that we can have our own improvement or investment internalized? Okay, so that never happened. We come back to the Sirleaf administration of growth and development. That's fine, but no one ever bothered there to empower Liberian businesses. And as a result, today the Liberian businesses and entrepreneurs are still suffering. Okay, that's what I mean when I say that. Okay, we need to have policies that back all of these slogans. And the pro-poll slogan needs solid policies, okay, that will ensure, value is retained in Liberia. Okay, and because we haven't done that historically, we find ourselves in the position that we are now. Liberia is one of the largest exporters of rubber or iron ore, for that matter. And what value have we gotten? In Tubmanburg, in Bombay County, we have a great big hole in the ground that's filled with water that we now call the Blue Lake, which is very, very beautiful scenically. But that was because of the open pit mining. And you go to the town and it's a complete ghost town because we never bothered to add value to our resources. Okay, if we are going to develop, we need to restructure our foundations that focus on our interests. Even our international policies, our diplomatic and global policies, it should be focused on our development because diplomacy has one basic driving principle. It's a matter of national interests. Yeah. The national interest of the great United States of America is their security. Our diplomatic and global interests should be our economic development. So we should structure our global interaction, our diplomatic interaction, our foreign policy around our own national development. It's important that we do that. Are we doing that? It doesn't seem to be that way.
Would you give maybe in terms of grading level, will you grade any of these developments, the open door policy, let's say in the cause of the people, and of course, Madam Sirleaf, as well as the I can't even involve the people now, but you live in those areas and you serve their country in those areas as well. I mean, which one would you say perhaps at least
It's
was okay?
difficult, it's difficult to grade because they were all in political control or leadership under different circumstances. So it's a
All right.
difficult thing to do. I would tell you one thing though. As far back as I can remember, and my term of reference for Liberian leadership is President Tubman. Okay, so I was a little boy when President Tubman was president, and I grew up under the Tubman era. But from President Tubman clear through to today, I think our leaders are good tacticians. They are not good, they have not been good strategists. There's a difference. They are good tacticians, but they are not good strategists. Because when you're developing a strategy, it usually has a long-term visionary approach. But in my own experience, and this is my own personal opinion, many of the leaders from President Tubman, Tolbert, Doe, whoever else, they've all been tacticians, and they respond to immediate action. And that's why you see many times, for example, in the previous administration, Mrs. Sirleaf's administration, it was always a last-minute effort because it was always tactical as opposed to strategic. Okay, I'm sort of dodging answering your question about grading them, but the reason why I won't grade them is because they all were in a situation, a totally different environment. Charles Taylor was in an environment where he had issues with the West, okay, and that hampered investment. Okay, President Tubman was in an environment where he had an incredible opportunity because the Liberia was seen as a leader, as a regional and continental leader. Yeah. So he had different opportunities. Okay, but I don't think it's fair to say, okay, I would grade this one a C and this one an A. In my own opinion, no one has gotten an A. No one deserves an A. But that's why I wouldn't do that.
You are in a better seat to compare and contrast, and perhaps for us that didn't experience some of them to tell us, oh yeah, Max, you did miss yesterday. Yesterday was like this, and think you just said right now we're facing serious problems as far as having gasoline in the country is concerned. Okay, stable rice is expensive, so one way or another you must say, well, you missed yesterday when things were like this under this regime.
If I were to compare the leaders from Tubman on forward, I think probably the most effective, in my own opinion, was Tolbert. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough time to really implement his own vision. But in terms of his approach, his style, his vision, I think that he sort of leads the others, so to speak. Mrs. Sirleaf brought about a sense of a belonging, of freedom, okay, among the populace, okay. But one of the biggest shortcomings of all of our leaders in history, of all of our leaders basically, has been their inability to create an inclusive environment. Where everyone feels that they are a part of this thing. I need to be a part of this. I need to have some say in it because if I don't, I could impact my own destiny. That has been lacking historically in Liberia. Okay, and it goes back to the point I made about the reconciliation. If we were a better reconciled people, we wouldn't have that problem. Okay, we got an issue of tribalism and ethnicity problem in Liberia. But yet and still we choose to deny it and go into denial. Okay, we need to address those head on.
All right, let's get our fellow Liberians involved in it. A lot of them, a lot of comments here. Perhaps you can address them before we move forward. Let me just quickly go on the dashboard here. Macmillan Vey, good afternoon, Ambassador. I'm following the discussion keenly. Welcome, thank you very much. Let me see, I'm looking for a comment. Memu McKay, she say, McCaw, sorry, well said. So as giving you a pat in the back there, that let's see whether we can get more comments here. Edwin Besse Watson, straight talk, sir. All right, thank you so much. Let's see, Joetta Johnson, definitely, sir. Corruption is the main foundation of Liberia. Corruption has been a serious problem. Cutting edge here, claiming is often said, cut your cloth according to your measurement. Liberia should learn from that piece. We cannot continue to spend beyond our budget limit and continue to beg international contributors or donors. The writing is on the wall. We must read it and comprehend it. Yeah, it is here. We'll give it to you. Some of you will have to publish it. Memo Mako, it is a generational issue. All right, let's go back to Macmillan Vey. Government needs to take some serious fiscal decisions as regard wasteful spending, especially on luxurious vehicles and other expenditures. I think the ambassador is to the point. Let's go down to Memo Mako. It is a collective effort, changing mindsets and attitudes. Yes, indeed, Memo Mako. The question is, Liberia ready? Is Liberia ready for such system change? That's a big question there. Memo Mako, yes, because of who benefits the most from the resources in the country. Who is profiting, Liberia or? So she end her question there. You can respond to any before we move?
Yeah, I'm really pleased by the responses and the feedback. I think that the one thing that I caught from there is it's a collective effort. Okay, it's a collective effort, and it does take discipline. We cannot continue to go to the rest of the world with hat in hand, asking for assistance when we have not properly managed our own. Okay. And it will take some tough decisions. And, you know, sometimes we always let politics drive decisions. You know, one of the things I said in that document was there's a difference between politicians and leaders. Okay? Good leaders, by definition, are good politicians. But unfortunately, good politicians are not necessarily good leaders. Okay? And we found ourselves in a situation in Liberia where we've been led by politicians that are not good leaders because they do not have good leadership skills. They only have political skills, okay? And when it comes to making decisions in governance and statehood, it requires leadership. It requires using a whole array of tools to make decisions. Not just politics is just one tool. Okay, you have to do cost-benefit analysis. You got to do econometrics. You have to understand and know all those things. But unfortunately, for the history of Liberia, many times the politicians have been crippled by the fact that they only know political solutions. Okay, and many of our problems do not require political solutions. As a result of that, everything is politicized. You know, you determine, okay, we're going to pass a policy that all government officials, all ministers of government will drive a certain kind of car, and that car costs $40,000. Okay? And then you go on and say, okay, we will say the car costs $40,000. And then when the car is assigned to a minister, we will arrange a payment plan. So for every month, he will pay X number, for example, talking purposes, $200. So for 36 months, he will pay $200 a month. At the end of that 36 months, the minister then owns the car. Okay, that is not a political decision. That is an economic and financial decision. And what is the justification behind that? Number one, the car at year 3 transfers from maintenance to repair. So by transferring the ownership of the car from the government to the custodian, you are transferring the cost of repair. So you are avoiding the cost of repair by the government. Second thing is the minister or that government official, keeping in mind that after 3 years this car will belong to him, will take better care of the vehicle. Okay? Those are all logical, rational management decisions. financial decisions, economic decisions. Okay, we put that policy in place. Sooner or later, somebody will decide, well, this person is a special minister, so he deserves an $80,000 car, so we will push the policy aside, and because he's such a special politician, we'll give him an $80,000 car. That's a political decision, you see? And as a result of the fact that many of our leaders only are effective politicians, they cannot make good leaders. And I'm talking about the history of Liberia, okay? So there's always that matter of using personal and political decisions when it's not the best thing for the country.
Let me take another point here where you said that the primary reason for the lack of significant and sustained progress is that all attempts to foster real growth and development have been built on a defective social and cultural foundation. The defect points to two interconnected facts. First, Liberia was born out of crisis, and second, Liberians have lived under a cloak of national denial.
I believe that. I believe that. Our cultural, social, economic value system, our foundation is weak. The pillars are corruption, ineptness, impunity, the absence of capacity, tribalism, the absence of reconciliation. Those are all, those pillars, those factors have weakened the pillars. Okay, so if you are unable to build a road from the Bella Yala Road, for example, and it costs $20 million, in that system, you're unable to, you pay for it, but you're unable to build it because of corruption. Based on that particular system, how can you invest $500 million in a road on the same system? So it seems to me that before we talk about making investments, we need to go and fix the foundation. We need to go and attack. We need to go and tackle corruption. We need to go and tackle impunity. We need to go and tackle the issue of the tribal issue and the social challenges we have and the reconciliation issue. Once we strengthen it, and people begin to know, we strengthen it with democracy and a solid justice system and a system of fairness, okay? And we build our foundation on that. Then we can go ahead and do all the wonderful hospitals and schools and coastal highways, et cetera, et cetera. But as long as we have a weak foundation, okay, we're not going to go anywhere politically or economically or socially for that matter.
That you care to expand on this a little bit and educate us a little bit. Liberia was born out of crisis. I mean, does that mean that is that the trend we stay continuing? This is why, I mean, there's no excuse?
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that. The crisis of slavery, the crisis of dominance by one small group over a larger group, the crisis of tribalism, the crisis of denial, okay? Until we can come to grips that, look, we have a problem here. We have a problem that when one person of an ethnic group heads an agency of government, there's a good likelihood that the majority of the employees of that particular agent will be of the same ethnic group. It's a problem. Let's not lie about it, okay? There's an issue where you have a very small group that for many, many generations dominated the larger group, this quote-unquote Congo and country thing. We need to hit it head on. Let's not be afraid to attack. My name is Milton Nathaniel Barnes. It's not a typical indigenous Liberian name, okay? But I always say one thing. Yes, they will call me a Congo man. I consider it a pejorative term, but that's okay. I accept it. Okay, and I've always said the one thing I will not do, I would not apologize to anyone for what I am because of the accident of birth. No one has any control over how they came into this world and the circumstances under which they came into this world. Okay, but me personally, I have a primary moral driver that's taken philosophy, and it's a biblical one. The Holy Bible says, for of those to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
So I personally, Nathaniel Barnes, I feel a special moral, spiritual obligation to reach back and help those less fortunate than I am, okay? Because I happened, because of accident of birth, because by the grace of God, to be born into a certain level of affluence. I'm not going to apologize to anyone about it, but I'm going to do something about it to help others, okay? Until we can come to grips with those very hard facts, until I can come to grips with the fact that somebody may not like me because of what I am, okay? Or there's a person of a certain ethnic group who will never, ever elect somebody from another ethnic group as his leader. He would prefer to put someone from his own ethnic group who is incompetent. These are hard facts, okay, that we in Liberia have decided to go into denial for. We refuse to openly address those matters.
But that, I thought, to be frank, I mean, this was over. I mean, this issue of Congo versus the native, I thought it was over since 1980. Are we still experiencing it?
Let me ask you, how can it be over? How can it be over when there is indisputable evidence that a certain citizen in our country, okay, is guilty of all kinds of atrocities during the civil crisis, okay? But he stands in a very high public position and boastfully says, you can do nothing to me because I got my people to protect me. We are not over it, my friend, because that's wrong. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, you are not above the law.
So are you tying that to ethnicity?
You say what?
Are you tying that to ethnicity, ethnic belonging?
Yeah,
I'm talking about Congo.
This gentleman is saying, you can't do nothing to me because you do something to me, they will do it to my people, my boy, and not sit down and lay happy. Is that right? Of course not. Okay, but we hear it, we feel certain ways, but we won't do anything about it, okay, because we are in denial. Now, there are some folks out there that will get upset at me for saying these things, but I wager anybody, tell me if what I'm saying is it may be not your truth, but it's fact, and there's a distinct difference between truth and fact.
Yeah.
Facts are facts. Okay, so there we go. Until we can fix that in its most basic form, so that everyone feels. Look, there are people in our country today who were traumatized during our civil crisis. Okay, they continue to be traumatized because they have not brought closure to their own experience. We need to address this issue and put it to bed.
All right. His name is Dr. Nat Barnes. He's our guest on the Max K Talk Show this afternoon. Thank every one of you who stay continuing with your contribution. Let me see whether I can go there, because we just stepped into something very, very important here. We're talking about where we're going into reconciliation and the process leading to it. But let me see whether I can get some of your comments before we go further. All right, let's take this one from Emmanuel Jackson. Exactly, we have the issues of inclusion. Okay, we have the issue of inclusion. Many Liberians born in the 1950s, or born in the 1950s rather, 60s and beyond, didn't have social and economic status in Liberia. How can the government give all Liberians social and economic status? Hopefully that will be able to address that in our question. Roosevelt Flombo, great learnings. I wish to get a copy of your paper. And what do you think this government should do differently? All right, that's he ended there with a question as well. What should this government do differently? Okay, Memo. Okay, yes, she's agreeing. Joetta, agree with you. All right, let's go further down. The issue today starts from the roots. That's Memo Macor. Okay, Emmanuel Ma, we came a long way with these issues that, yes, indeed. Let's see, Memo. Okay, you are right. Tell them, Nat Barnes, that Joyce Deadline. Okay, let's go down a little bit. Memo Mako, this is the issue we avoid to address in our society. So that is hitting it right before us now. So let's say this fight that's true. Okay, Mahmoud Makor, how can people heal and move forward without reconciliation? That's the point we're just coming to about. That let's hear from you with respect to these comments from your fellow Liberians.
Well, I think what can be done, what we need to create, number one, a certain sense of inclusion by everyone. Politically, the way to do this is to decentralize government. Right now, our government is too centralized. Everything, all the decision making, it's central to Monrovia.
I saw the billboard that. I saw the billboard when I saw you the last time. I saw the billboard. They said the government is decentralized, and I was so happy.
But it is not. In actuality, it is not. You see, when we begin to move out in the remote and the rural areas, people must feel that they have some say in how the government runs. Okay, for example, we are still appointing superintendents. We are still appointing municipal leaders. That should not happen. Those that are in the remote areas, are in those municipalities and those chiefdoms and whatnot, they should be the one that select the leaders. Of course, the issue there is, there's always, well, we don't have the financial resources to do an election of paramount chiefs, for example. That's true, but there's another way around it. Why don't we say to, for example, this chiefdom, you know what, get among yourselves, select 5 of your peers that you believe could lead you or could provide leadership for you as paramount chief, and then we'll select one of those 5. At least those people at that level have a say in who is going to be their leader, their municipal or their local leader. And as a result of that, that person is now responsible to them and not Monrovia. Okay? So the way to create this better representation or inclusion is by empowering people across the country. You see, all the decisions are made here in Monrovia are made there on Capitol Hill, you know, and the people in the villages and in the remote areas, they are just sitting there saying, well, whatever they want to do over there, they will do it. When they send a superintendent, I can't talk to the superintendent because I know he's a representative from the president, and I cannot speak my mind. But if that superintendent was elected by those people within the county, trust me, and he's their employee, okay, he is responsible to them, and they can call him to boot. But right now, because of the situation is not decentralized, those people across the country are not properly empowered politically. Okay? Then, of course, the bottom line is education. Okay? We need to enhance our education system to make sure people get a thorough education. And I'm not talking about education in the traditional sense of the word. Okay? We need to look at our system. We have a lot of people, a good chunk of our population that are adults, that are illiterate. But just because a person is illiterate doesn't mean they're stupid. Okay? Some of the wisest people I've met cannot read a letter. Okay? We need to find a way to enhance, provide an enhanced and customized education system that will make sure everyone across Liberia, okay, is properly empowered to be able to think for themselves and make good decisions. Okay, the process of voting, you know, you as well as I know that the process of voting, it's really not a democratic process in the true sense of the word. Because a voter should make a determination is, how can this particular leader bring value to my life and my children's life down the road? But we know the way it works in Liberia and other parts of the third world, developing countries, is whoever has the biggest purse, the biggest pocketbook, wins. Okay? So we need to sort of begin to change. Is it going to be easy? No. I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone that this is just going to be a panacea and it'll be easy to do. That's not the case. But we need to be prepared for the challenges. We need to have courage and humility to do what needs to be done.
All right, let me take another point here that, you know, while I was reading your piece, share with our fellow Liberians as well. You said here that there have been historical attempts to establish peace building and reconciliation platforms in Liberia, from Tubman's unification program to the post-Civil War Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Attempts have been made to address inequalities, injustices, and other social and cultural stumbling blocks to progress. However, these have met only limited success because they examined symptoms rather than the deeply rooted causes of Liberian crisis. Before this the current president came to power, I think he was appointed, if my memory set me right, by Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, either in the first in her first tenure of power, to be the peace ambassador for Liberia, so that we could pave the way for reconciliation. Because as far as I know, maybe you might disagree with me also. As far as I know, since we had the so-called disarmament and we ended the war, we haven't had actual peace and reconciliation stuff going on in the country. So
I agree with you.
In that note, with respect to what you are saying here, should somebody take a blame then? Why is it up to now that we are not on the right trajectory?
I don't think any one person should take a blame. Who's to blame? We Liberians are to blame. Okay, we Liberians are to blame because, number one, we have not demanded of our leadership that we need to work on this. I have an issue. I have a problem. I need someone to listen to me. And it becomes a problem because of the way we are structured, which I just explained to you. Some poor lady in the village whose children were killed or whose children were taken away as child soldiers, who does she have to pass those issues to that will be able to represent her properly? No one. Okay? But the issue of reconciliation, we have to live. How do you reconcile a people? You reconcile a people by empowering them. Okay, you can't. We had this fiasco with the TRSC, where we had all the different warlords and big time politicians getting up, taking the limelight, and talking. What about the woman whose husband was killed while she watched, and her children taken away? Did anybody hear of any of those? Okay, until we can get down to the palaver hut level, where we go to these places, go to these villages, go to these hamlets, go to these towns, and say, let's come on, people, let's talk this thing. Okay? But as we are talking it, we must empower them. Okay, we read that John Brown did this to the village. John Brown is now among you, and you have a problem with him. Okay, we will try to integrate John into this thing. We'll talk it. But in the same time, we're going to establish an agriculture project for the village, where it's going to be a communal farm, where we can all, including John Brown, the victims and the perpetrators, once they talk, they can go together and create wealth for themselves. You see, it's not something we will just talk about. We have to live it. Difficult to do, but it's possible. You see, we are not that many. Relatively speaking, Liberia, 4.5 million people, small area, 43,000 square miles. Our problems are not that many. The fundamental issue behind our problems is we have not been prepared to address them head on. Okay, and as I said to you, we talk about it because many of the time our leaders are not leaders, they are politicians. You see? And the irony behind the whole thing is because of this absence of an educated and reasoned voter, they will always vote for the politicians. You see? They will vote for the politicians and they will leave the leaders alone. You see, because the leader is not prepared to make grandiose promises. You vote for me and I will have this whole village electrified in 2 weeks. You vote for me and I will have a road going to here, we'll build farm to market road. They never talk about you vote for me and I will weed out corruption. You vote for me and I promise I will create reconciliation among us. Because that's not sexy. That's not sexy, that doesn't sell. Okay, but we need leaders, not politicians.
Okay. That's Nathaniel Barnes. Of course, he's our studio guest on the Max K Talk Show this afternoon. Let's see whether we can also involve you this afternoon, continue to involve you in these discussions here. Very educative as well. Law blessed son Roberts says here, that's true. We need a nationwide awareness. I think our people lacks the information they need to make the right decisions. And must say, Mr. Barnes is of those people I really do admire for his educative role. Thank you so much. Moses F. Edwards, Liberian people say, you kill my father and mother, I will vote for you. Ellen Johnson. Okay, let's go down. Lost blessed son Roberts. Exactly. Let the people decide for themselves. Yes, Gabriel Kano, I say. Thanks, Dr. Barnes, Dr. Nat Barnes. You are right. Abu Bakr Fofana, the problem with centralization is that those locally appointed leaders will give their loyalty to the president who appointed them and not to the people for whom they work and whose taxes paid them. Mr. Barnes is a 10% right. Okay, let's go down a little bit. Memo Mako says here, this is the best discussion yet on the topic. Thank you. All right. Okay, Abu Bakr, instead of saying 10%, actually he meant 100%. Dr. Barnes is right. Just before you elaborate on that, let me just add something from your piece here. Anybody want this piece of paper? Some people who've been talking already contact me. I will share with you, or you can contact that as well. Let me read something from here, and then you try to educate us a little bit. You said here, and I quote, a good and effective leader is by definition an effective politician. On the contrary, a good and effective politician does not necessarily translate to an effective leader. What do you mean?
Well, I tried to explain that earlier. You know, a good and effective leader has an array of tools at his or her disposal to address and solve problems. Okay, a good and effective politician may not have those tools and will always rely on the only thing they know, which is the political solution.
Yeah, but it can produce a brilliant manifesto.
Yeah, when you produce a brilliant manifesto that one will eat, that one will eat, you know, you need leadership, okay, that will make good decisions, and then more importantly, will live those decisions. You will live those decisions. You can't say to people, look, do what I say do, but don't do what you see me do. You can't say to people, we don't have enough money to pay teachers, but we have enough to buy exorbitant cars, or to take huge delegations on foreign travel. Okay? There are some countries, look, let me tell you something. The fundamental thing about being a poor, weak country, to change and be effective, you must first and foremost accept the fact that you are poor and weak. And then you create strategies as to how to change that.
Get out of there.
Okay? That's why I was saying, you know, the difference between strategists and tacticians. Okay? If you're going to say we're going to create a policy of cost control, then you must be able to live that discipline of cost control. I just learned that 2 days ago, the legislature had a one-day seminar, a one-day retreat. It cost the government of Liberia 100,000 United States dollars to host one-day retreat for the legislature. And within that $100,000 budget, they each got $1,000 as per diem or whatever that is. Now, what sense does that make? If someone can explain that to me, okay, and tell me that's not a political decision. That's a political decision and not a decision of a good leader. You see? And I'm not blaming, it's wrong, okay? We must accept the fact that that is wrong. You can't be a poor country as we are, okay, and you're spending $100,000 in one day for the legislature to get together and have a meeting. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Maybe somebody can explain it to me and show me the rationale behind it. Okay, but a good leader will establish the policy from an array of tools. It will not necessarily be political decisions. financial decisions, economic decisions, management decisions, technical decisions, okay? And then they are prepared to live and lead by example.
Thank you for this piece. I hope people, we couldn't go deep, do all of it, but I think we cover a lot. Any of you that are watching, of course, I want this piece written by Dr. Nat Barnes. You can get in touch as well with me. I will send it to you via email. That you talk extensively about peace, reconciliation, justice, unity in this piece. All of which, of course, are fundamental to our progress. And, of course, all of which are of today a big issue in Liberia. And we thought that maybe since after 2003, we thought we have graduated from most of those verses. But to my utmost surprise, we saw, you saw the process leading to the election. I normally refer to it as it was really brutal. Brutal in the sense that we were at each other's throat. You say something, somebody coming at you like they want to really perhaps just finish you up or so. And these trends are continuous up to this present. That how can we have a true reconciliation with all of these kind of hatred in our mind? Is there any way?
It's a difficult thing, but it all depends on the resolve of the leaders. It's the resolve of our leaders. We are a very traditional people, Liberians. We are very traditional. We believe in our elders, respecting our elders. Sometimes we drift away from these things, but generally we are very traditional people. We look to our leadership for example. We look for our leadership for the vision. We look to our leadership to set the path or set the pace, okay? And until we have leadership that have a full understanding and grasp of the power of reconciliation, we're going to be struggling. So the answer is it depends on the leadership, okay? And that leadership must understand that saying one thing is one thing. Doing something about it is another thing. There's a difference between form and substance, okay? We must be substantive in our intent. It also requires everybody's efforts. Everybody has a role to play in this, okay? If it means that you start at your household level, okay, it's important. But the leadership has to set the pace, okay? And I'm hoping and I'm praying that we have the leadership that will set the pace. And if we don't, then the people, look, another thing I believe, people get the leaders they deserve. Let me repeat myself. People get the leaders they deserve. If you get a leader and you start to complain and moan and groan and all of that, you need to stop and ask yourself the question, well, who put him there or who put her there? You see? So we as the everyday folks, we need to begin to stop and think. I have a role to play in this, and that role comes down to exercising that franchise, okay? But the road to reconciliation has to be driven by our leaders.
That let me bring you to one of the most current ones, because especially so when you were serving in a capacity as an ambassador representing your country, some of these issues sometimes when it pops up like this, you must be contacted perhaps to ask you. The recent development with respect to this issue of $16 billion. You've been reading about it, you've been hearing it in a circle in Liberia also. What are your thoughts on it? Do you really believe that something like this happened? And
well, Max, I have several thoughts on it. First of all, this thing has been badly handled from a communications perspective. And because it was badly communicated with inconsistent reports coming from different places, it really painted Liberia in a very negative picture. So I'm not even talking about the point about whether something was done or nefarious was done or not. But I just think that the way it has been portrayed, the inconsistencies of the stories has really painted a very unfavorable picture for Liberia. There are investors out there that upon this thing happening, you say, well, wait a minute, I'm going to have to wait and see how this is settled. Okay, so the first lesson we can learn is we need to solidify our communicative processes and frameworks on how we communicate these kinds of things. The first thing. The second thing is fiscal fiscal and monetary management in government needs to be tightened. Okay. Sometimes we just do knee-jerk responses when things happen in the economy without thinking it through. Okay. No one knows the exact amount. Is it 16 billion? Is it 5 containers? Is it 4 containers? What is it? The question that I ask the most about when I look at this whole thing is, yeah, they're talking about 15, 16 billion, whatever. But what happened to the $25 million that was released into the economy to quote unquote mop up the excess Liberian dollars? How was that done? Was it done through the banking system? How was it done? There are many, many, many questions that are unanswered. Okay, and I think a good decision that had been made was having an objective outside entity come in to do an investigation. We can then make some good, solid decisions once we get the results of those investigations. And the good thing about having an outsider, objective entity like the FBI do such an investigation is you can be sure that it will not be biased. It will not be political. Okay? Now, the question comes to bear is we need to be patient. We need to be patient. But the most important question is, once we get the results of the investigation, what will we do about it? Will we be politicians or will we be leaders? And that is where the rubber meets the road. That's where the real test of the pudding will be.
The reason I'm asking the direct question, whether you believe that something like this happened, $16 billion, is because I've been going to, trainings here and conferences, and I've been coming across, questions like this, and people asking me, even from the media perspective here in the UK.
Whether it can happen? Of course it can happen. Of course it can happen.
No. Do you believe that this happened?
It's possible. It's possible for something like that to happen.
No.
In our system, there are just too many loose ends in our system for that something like that not to eventually happen. It can happen.
Wow.
Now, can I say to you, it did happen? I can't say that. Let me look at the reports, the results of the reports. But can it happen? Absolutely, it can happen.
Evidence proofing that investigation is out. I don't know. We're hoping for it to be out maybe soon. Any punishment you think you can propose?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. We get the investigation. And the thing about an investigation like that, because those that are doing the investigation have nothing to lose, they ain't got a job to lose, they ain't got nothing to gain, they're just doing, like we're saying, like a piece of job, they can afford to be as honest and as forthright as possible. So we can anticipate a report or a final result or final report that will be straight from objective and honest. What we do with it is another issue. That is where, that's the question I have. Once we get the results and they show all the different findings, how we manage it, what we do with it, and how we manage it will be the true test, okay, of our resolve to be transparent.
That, as a concerned citizen of this beautiful country, what is your position? Share with us, the Liberians now that are listening to you. What is your position on the call by Liberians for the establishment of War and Economic Crimes Code, and also calling for the full implementation of the TRC recommendations? And what do you think that since it's been a very long time since this document was put together and presented to the madam before she left, why is it, from your perspective, why is it we haven't heard anything about it?
The first question you ask is, what do I feel about it? I am 100% behind the implementation of the findings of the TRC. I do believe we need to have some sort of process. 100% behind it. However, it must be fair and transparent. It must not be a witch hunt. We need to be clear on the facts. Remember I said there's a difference between truth and facts. But if we can show beyond any reasonable doubt, the facts point to atrocities or somebody did something wrong, they need to take the consequences of their actions. I'm 100% behind that. Because it's the only way that we're going to begin the whole healing and reconciliation process. Because I don't care what my own opinion is, I don't care what anybody says, we are not a reconciled people. We were not reconciled at the cessation of the violence in our crisis. It was smoothed over, okay, and we haven't gone to the root of it. We've always just looked at the symptoms of the issues as opposed to the root causes of the issues. Once we can root out the root causes, okay, and if there are perpetrators behind those, they need to pay the price, regardless, okay, then it will be this start of a true rebirth of Liberia. But trust me, it's like we're going to be like a mouse on a treadmill, going nowhere. Like the title of the piece is "Endless Road to Nowhere." You know, we're just going and going and going, and we can't seem to get anywhere or accomplish anything. But those are some fundamental facts that we have to come to grips with as a people, as a government, okay, and as a country. If we're going to move forward.
There's a request here for you, but let me take you to this. That you in Liberia, you listen to the radio, you follow the news. One of the statesmen, I will refer to him as a statesman as well because he served his country as a senator as well. President, let's say Mr. Prince Johnson. The last time he said on the radio, and I quote him, that they have decided to come together as on an association of former warring faction heads in Liberia. And that association, for them, they say, he didn't go much into it, but he told us that there is an association on the ground now known as Association of Former Warring Faction Heads. We don't know who all. He named about 3 people that I can't name now. And most recently, recording which I also have on the tape, he said in Nimba County, he was speaking before his people, and he said, and I quote, that under no circumstances anybody will arrest him because I got my boys ready and they will resist anybody that will come here to affect any arrest. That as
the temerity of one citizen to threaten an entire country. That is not acceptable. How can one man threaten all of us?
Yeah.
Does he have something to hide? You see? And then this issue about the association of what's their purpose? What's their mandate?
Does that statement actually tie in with some kind of a security threat?
Well, you know, I truly don't know, Max. I don't know, but you know, personally, I'm affronted by a statement like that because what you are basically doing, you are making a vile threat to the entire nation. Gosh, who in the world are you to do that? I don't care where you come from.
Now you being a father, you are a father, and you know the last statement he just made that you know he calling on his boys, that is, you know, children of Nimba County, to resist anything of that he got them ready. They are ready to defend him and defend their county also. I mean, what message will you have for your children that are now listening to you from that?
You know, but that whole approach is very divisive. It's very divisive. Why? If I'm ready to defend, who are you defending? Nobody has anything against Nimba County.
No.
Why are you inciting young people into violence? If you feel that you didn't do anything wrong, then let the due process take its place. Let's present the facts, and you have an opportunity to say, no, this is not the case, no, this is not the case, and defend yourself. But you are being a coward. You are being a coward when you stand behind young people to defend you. That's what I think. And I know I'm skating on thin ice by saying this. Okay, but I'm not afraid because that's a cowardly thing to say. It's a cowardly and unpatriotic thing to say.
All right, let's take the final one just before we come to the last one. From Norway, Major Dennis. Thanks, Dr. Barnes. Please come home. Harper, at Tubman University and contribute. I want you to go give a talk there also. Joetta Johnson, he's afraid of the War and Economic Crimes Code. This is totally unacceptable. But that, just before you can add up to this, as we come to the end of this frantic, great discussion, let me tie you in this again to refer to you, permit me to refer to you as a father, because you are a father as well. When you recently heard of the documentary that was released for a charity born in the States and on the ground to help our children, they refer to it, the charity as a More Than Me. When you saw that documentary and you heard about the story, as a father, what was your initial feeling?
I was very saddened by it, Max. I was saddened by it from several perspectives. Number one, first and foremost, the victimization of the children. I was very saddened by that. No child deserves that. No child deserves that. So that saddened me. But it angered me also, because here we are now ready to castigate this one white woman that came to Liberia to help. And there are indications that she was being impactful and helping. When within our very midst, we are doing these exact misdeeds. What happened to the parliamentarian, the member of legislature that raped the little 11-year-old girl? Whatever happened to it? Charity begins at home. Okay? So should people be punished for what happened at the school? Absolutely. Should there be a review of the board of directors and the leadership of the program? Absolutely. And appropriate measures must be taken to penalize them if there was any wrongdoing on their parts. Okay? But we need to look within. We had a member of legislature who raped an 11-year-old child. It was a big, no one hears about it anymore. That's the issue when I talk about the denial. You see, we make a lot of big noise about when this thing becomes public and we hear about this particular charity incident, but we don't look within ourselves. Okay, so what's all the noise about, for that matter? Let's be very blunt and honest about it. Has it not been happening all along? It happens here every day. Okay, until we can come to grips with the fact that there's a problem. Then when it comes up and there's some foreign aspect of it, we're going to a big yo-yo hoopla about it. Charity begins at home. We need to clean up our houses. We need to clean up our families. We need to rid our society of people like these that will prey on these young children. It's not fair. And the thing about it is, this same member of the legislature, if somebody did it to his daughter, he will put that person under the jail. But as long as it's impunity. He does whatever he pleases. That's not right. Okay? And if somebody try to do it to his child, his daughter, his sister, he will be ballistic. You see? So I'm just trying to say we need to hold a mirror up to ourselves and see what we need to do about it. That is what maddened me. But I'm very saddened by the future of these children being questionable because of these kinds of acts.
All right. Once again, just finally, all of you that are tuning in, those of you that are coming in, you came in late. We've been having a very, very fun, great discussion here. His name is Dr. Nat Barnes. Of course, he's been our guest on the Max K Talk Show this week. He's written a beautiful paper. Just for some of you that are coming in just now, if you want me to share with you, get in touch. You can get in touch with Dad himself as well. He will share with you. Very brilliant. Is something that we can also help to share with our community, those of us that are community leaders as well, so we can borrow something from there. But that just before we leave you for on this occasion, since you're giving us more than 1 hour already, anything final you want to share with us? Are we on the right trajectory now that we're about to get out of recession in Liberia?
Well, thank you for the opportunity first. And in spite of all of the things I've said, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for Liberia. I'm hopeful for Liberian people because I think very slowly we are evolving into a point where we realize that it involves me, it involves you. Okay? So I'm hopeful that we are moving, as it may be slow, but we are moving towards a better day. And hopefully we can get to a point where we get leaders, okay, that will lead us to a better day. Thank you.
All right, Doc. On this note, we want to say thank you so much for your time, and please continue to keep your line open for us when we need you, so you can come and have to talk to us.
Absolutely, Max. You know, you're my friend. I can whatever I can do to accommodate, I'll be happy to do so. But thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a blessed day. Bye bye.
You do likewise, Max.
All right, that was Dr. Nathaniel Barnes. All right, once again, we say many thanks, especially those of you that actually make contribution on this show. We highly appreciate you. That's the name, Dr. Nathaniel Barnes. Oh, I forgot to ask him. That politically, where are you? Right, that is taking a rest anyway. But on this note, on this midweek of the Max K Talk Show, we want to say a big thank you to Dr. Nathaniel Barnes for giving us his time. Yes, discussing Mama Liberia. Plenty ills. My father, before even my father died, he told me that we got a long way to go. I think I was just about 5 years old, and up to now I've been told that we still got a long way to go. I don't know when. Anyway, whatever it is, well, Liberia is all that matters, right? According to that, we all need to get involved. One person cannot push these wheels. Reconciliation, good governance, equality, unity, reconciliation. No, one person cannot do it. We all got to get involved. Well, on this note, I want to say thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Invitation is to join me next week. God's willing, we'll have some beautiful people in the house here. We'll be going to Lagos, Nigeria. Hopefully we'll be speaking to the Speaker of the House there. That's next Tuesday. On Wednesday, we'll be in Kenya as well. So thank you so much. God bless you. God bless the continent of Africa, and above all else, God bless Mama Liberia. I'm out for now. Bye bye.